And hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We are here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Man, our next guest for the better part of 2 decades has been following his passion across a myriad of awesome projects, 2 of which just so happen to be one of the largest film trilogies of all time and one of the biggest network TV shows in history. But there's a lot more to this dude than Hobbit Feet and Penny's Boat, man. The back catalog for his exploration show Wild Things is set to premiere on Animal Planet this summer, and his Swedish-American thriller 100 Code makes its American debut a week from tonight at 10/9 Central on WGN America. Here to tell us all about what he's got going on, the great Dominic Monaghan is here. Make some noise, right? Am I right? That's a noise-worthy dude right there. Pretty stoked, man. It's going to be awesome. He'll be out in just a second, but before we bring him out here, I believe we got a trailer for the show. So, Luke, let's go ahead and run that clip.
The NYPD and the Stockholm PD are tracking a serial killer suspected of the murder of 6 young women in and around New York City.
He's back in Stockholm, and he's not stopping. He likes it too much. He rapes her, strangles her, buries her close by. Breathing tube. More than you know.
You can save them. Save them. Save them. Save them.
100 Code premieres Tuesday, May 29th at 10 on WGN America.
Oh, man. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise. Dominic Monaghan's right here. It's right here. Come on. Come on. Oh, what's going on, man? Dominic, thanks so much for being here, dude. Congratulations.
You are more than welcome. Any opportunity to come to New York.
Fantastic. How's New York treating you so far? How are you doing, man?
Yeah, it's great, man. You know, I was saying to friends earlier on today, when I was a kid at school, there was a girl that I was kind of sweet on that used to go backwards and forwards to New York in the summer, and she would come back and tell me how much fun she had in New York and how great it is and all this magical stuff about New York. And I remember thinking at the time, God, it's only a city. Like, what's the big deal? You know, I'd never been. And then I came when I was 22 or 23 when we were doing Rings. And I've always associated New York with, like, the snow and, you know, horse-drawn carriages in Central Park, because that's what I was exposed to for the first 3 years. And then I came in the summer and it was all stinky and, you know, sweaty. But it is a truly magical city. It's something that you can't quite put your finger on. There's an energy, there's a feeling in the street. It's also one of the few cities in the world where people will just scream for no apparent reason out of nowhere. And it seems to be okay. You know, just people like, hey, what's up? And no one's what's wrong with that person? They're just like, oh, yeah, this is a place where everyone just screams for no apparent reason.
Oh, it's 78 degrees finally. That's all. They're just happy because it's finally not raining and cold. Right. Do you get something? Is there something, having been in the stuff that you've been in, worked on what you've worked on, is there something that gets yelled at you frequently, something you hear often?
It depends where I am, really. If I'm in Europe, then it's more kind of Lord of the Ringsy stuff. Over here, I think, in South America and in the United States, loss was kind of a big deal. So I've had people have screamed "Not Penny's Boat" at me quite a bit.
That's all you ever hear.
And then when I was in New York, one of my favorite interactions ever with someone who knew the show, I was at a bar called Epstein's, which is in the Lower East Side, and this really gorgeous girl walked past the window, and me and my pals were like sat next to the window, and it's a big, massive window. So she walked past, and we were all kind of like, "Oh man, that was a beautiful woman." And then, as you do. As you do. And then, like 2 or 3 minutes later, she came back and she put her hand on the glass. Like, I don't want to ruin it for you, but like when Charlie, no spoiler, it's been off the TV now 10, 15 years, when Charlie has his little moment, and she'd written her phone number on her hand, and I was like, oh, that's a gangster move.
That is a baller.
Right?
Wow. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I won't tell you the rest of that story, but it worked out all right.
Use our imaginations. You know, it's funny, man. We talk about, Lost. You did in Hawaii, and The Lord of the Rings, of course, New Zealand, Wild Things. You're all over the world. This is in Sweden. I'm not entirely convinced that you don't choose projects based on tricking people into getting to pay for you to go to awesome places.
It does benefit me, you know. I do like travel. I've had the travel bug all my life. I'm from Manchester. Both my parents are from Manchester, but I was brought up in Germany, lived in France for a while. My parents now live in Spain. My brother's lived in Costa Rica. I've lived in, New Zealand, Australia. It's just something that I've always done. I've always traveled, I tend to, even though it doesn't kind of seem like that a lot, I tend to pick projects based on scripts, and then where we go is that just happens to be that way. Obviously I'm from Europe, so going to Sweden was something that was quite alluring for me. But in terms of obviously making Rings and making Lost, I would have gone anywhere. I've filmed in some really awful places, and I've done that because the jobs have been good. But this one, I like these kind of Scandi noir type things. The bridge, the fall, the following, anything with the in front of it seems. Yeah. And this has that element to it. It has that slightly creepy, obviously quite dangerous serial killer element. And there's like two different characters to Stockholm, it seems. In the daytime it's sunny, it's bright, it's positive, and then at night this kind of character comes in, so that's what attracted me to it.
Well, when you talk about you choose based on scripts and you look at it, there's another thing I've heard you talk about before, which is being curious, staying curious. And I wonder, like, reading this script, looking at the character, what was it that scratched that itch for you, and you were like, oh, I want to get in here and play in this world?
Well, I hadn't played a guy from New York before for TV in America. And so many films are shot in New York, so you kind of feel like, well, I have to try and play someone from the East Coast at some point so that people can think, oh, he can do that. Right. I like these kind of mystery type shows. It's also I try not to repeat myself, So up until that point, I'd never played a truly dark kind of anti-hero. I didn't think so, right? No, not really. There's nothing that great about Conley, the guy that I play in this show, apart from the fact that he just really wants to solve the case. He's not friendly. He's not approachable. He's not kind. He's a drug addict. He's been involved in people's deaths. He's a mess of a character. And I thought, well, how do I play that and have the audience still realize that he has some integrity? He wants to catch the person. So that was the thing, really. It's the fact that what have I done? I've played a hero. I've played, an anti-hero. And then can I play a hero who really doesn't have any attractive qualities at all, which is kind of this guy.
Well, I also, you mentioned, too, you've never done anybody from New York for television. I love whenever you put on, like, a different... Like, you did a film, Pet, where you had... It wasn't a New York accent, but it was a very creepy, perfect, pitch perfect accent for that character. And I heard, like, hints of that, but you just take the New York and dial up the Brooklyn, like, with the water and the pizza pie and all these different things. I'm wondering what that process looks like for you when you have to change your voice and really inhabit this new way entirely of speaking.
That becomes a character too, In Pet, this movie that I played, this thriller, I played this very kind of myopic thinking guy, very, very specific, very deliberate with his actions. So you don't really notice it, but I noticed it, and it was something that I did intentionally. I made sure that he spoke with spaces in between his words. Like very specific, like that he's thinking about everything.
Everything's a choice.
Right. And then the thing with 100 Code is that Bobby Moresco, the creator, director, producer, is from Hell's Kitchen. So he kind of talks like this, hey, Dom, you got to play it like this guy, you got to talk it like this. And I was like, oh, Bobby, I don't know if I can play it like that. Because even though that guy's genuine, and he does genuinely talk like that, I'm going to sound a little bit like a caricature, like, hey, come on, what you doing, buddy? With all these people that you're killing, what's the big deal, kind of thing. So I was like, I'll give it a little East Coast flavor, but I can't be as genuinely Hell's Kitchen-y, Bronxy as he is. And I met some New York cops who had very thick accents, so it was real. But I just thought, I wonder if an audience will get slightly distracted by an over-the-top New York accent. So I gave it East Coast flavor, and then I just kind of left.
Yeah, you do a perfect job of skirting that line. I think had you gone any farther, it might have become that thing, but you're right there where it needs to be.
Right.
And it's funny because, if you're not familiar with actual people in New York, you think, oh, that's just how they all talk on television. No, but you're right. You're surrounded by real New York cops. People talk like this. It's a totally natural thing.
Yeah. But like you said, it's not every New Yorker that would say, like, water.
Yeah,
water. My guy kind of does say that every so often. But also, the more time that he spent in Sweden and the more he was, the character, I mean, the more that the character is misunderstood by Swedish cops and by Swedish people, I thought, okay, well, maybe Connolly starts to soften his accent so that he is understood, so that he starts to ingratiate himself with the people of Stockholm, you know. So it was also a character decision. Those things are helpful, you know. I mean, like, I whenever I'm reading a script that I know I'm going to do or that I think I'm going to do, the things that happen for me that make sense for me are I sit around while I'm reading the script. I sit around thinking, how would this guy walk? How would he eat? How would he smell? How would he sleep? How would he sound? You know, and if I start to do that and it all links, like, oh, the way that he sounds is the cereal that he would pick, and it's the snack that he would eat at a ball game, and it's the way that he would answer the phone. If all those things starts to congruently link, then I think, oh, I got this character. And with Conley, you know, he kind of skulks the way that he walks. He's kind of all shut down,
to him that
and his accent's very attitudey. You know, the East Coast accent has quite a lot of attitude to it, and it all started to come together. Obviously, he eats pizza. You know, obviously he doesn't really take care of himself. He drinks probably Mickey's Big Mouths, all those kind of things. You know, and then it becomes a more worthwhile character. You know.
Are the answers to those questions the things that you're looking for when you do stuff like immerse yourself and hang out with NYPD and stuff like that? Are you looking for all those little details and like you see one, I'm going to file that away. That's something good for Connolly. That's something good.
Yeah. I stole a few things from the cops. Not literally, I would have been arrested for that. But I stole a few things. Like you'll notice, or I noticed at least, that none of them sit with their backs to a door when you meet them. They all sit making sure that they know where that door is and where that door is, you know. That's
not just a cop. I come from an Italian family. That is an Italian thing.
Oh, really?
My grandfather, my father, my uncle, on my wife's side, same thing. They won't sit with their back to the door. Right. None of us have ever really been connected or anything like that, but there's something about that mentality of like, I just want to see who's coming in and going.
Right, you see, now I'm the total opposite.
Really?
Because I don't want to pull focus if I'm in a restaurant with a friend or in a bar or something. So whenever if I'm with, you know, one other person and they want to sit somewhere, I'll try and sit with my back to the most of the restaurant so that it doesn't become something that creates a scene. And the cops kind of, you know, I was aware of seeing the difference, you know. There was another guy who, Conley doesn't smoke, but there was another guy who had a lot of like nervousy kind of tics with his cigarette. And when he was telling me something that was kind of conspiratorial, he'd kind of like bring me in, you know, like bring me in as he's smoking type stuff. And I thought, well, that makes sense for a cop, because if he's trying to like shake someone down, or if he's having a conversation with another cop, which is confidential, you would kind of bring it in a little bit, you know. So I'm always stealing things like that. I steal things just for the hell of it from people that I see on the streets or movies. Like, I mean, there's characters in movies that I admire: Han Solo, Tyler Durden in Fight Club, Travis Bickle to a certain extent in Taxi Driver, where I'll just steal stuff. I'll be like, I'm going to steal his walk. I'm going to steal that shirt. I've got that T-shirt that he wears. You know, those pair of shoes. There's just things that you steal. You know, it's as an actor, you're constantly thinking, well, can I steal that and make it look like it was mine? Right. Can I make it mine? You know?
Right. Can you give it your own spin? Can it become something and sort of redefine it in a way and recolor it with your flavor?
Right.
You know, speaking of amazing actors that you want to steal from, you got a chance to work with the late great, Michael Nyqvist on this show. The dynamic between you two and the back and forth and all that, it's a fantastic thing to watch. Talk about that relationship, what it was like working with Michael, and how you guys kind of developed the camaraderie, rivalry, sort of at each other's necks, but both getting each other's backs kind of thing.
Yeah, Mike was a lovely guy. Unfortunately, he died last year, which was really sad. He'd been sick for a while. He succumbed to cancer, which was, you know, desperately sad for a guy. I think he was in his late 50s, you know. I had been aware of his work from the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and then obviously he was in Mission Impossible. He was kind of my in to Stockholm, both for the character and for myself as a human being, because he would say, oh, this is where you should go for a good cup of coffee. This is where you should go for dinner. If you're going to take a girl out, go here. This is a place to avoid. This is a thing to do type thing. He's very giggly and friendly, Mike. He was obsessed with Candy Crush, which is kind of strange. Yeah, he played it all the time. So they'd be like putting the clapperboard on. Okay, Mike, we're going to go. And he'd be like, okay, wait. And then put it down. And then as soon as we cut, he'd be like, oh, yeah. So that was kind of a fun element to him. He's very giggly. I'm a big fan of corpsing actors. You know what corpsing is? It's like where you make them laugh, but you don't laugh. So you keep a straight face, but you make them laugh. And then the director's like, why are you laughing? And you're like, it's got nothing to do with me. I'm ready to go. So I was constantly like making him corpse. He was very, very easily to corpse. And we had a great time. I mean, probably my most vivid memory with Mike is Midsummer's a huge festival for Swedish people. It's kind of the start of the summer solstice. And they do a lot of like traditional, weird Swedish stuff where they all toast each other with very strong alcoholic drinks, and then lots of people take their clothes off and jump into freezing cold rivers and saunas and stuff. So we got invited up to Midsummer, and that was all going on with like 40 fully grown adults, which is strange to say the least. But those are probably my most vivid memories of Mike. He's a great actor as well.
Yeah, I think we we touched on this a little bit earlier, but you've done, of course, you can't put a microphone in your hand without somebody asking you about Lord of the Rings or Lost. So the two of the biggest pieces of pop culture and entertainment of the last 20, 30, 40 years almost ever, right? So you achieved that, you did that, you were in those things, and you've consistently for the past 15 years, whatever it's been, still done really cool, amazing things, made really interesting, cool decisions. And I'm curious, what has been your guiding light, your North Star, when you're looking into that script, when you're looking for these different projects, having achieved these huge monumental things that some people, they're lucky if they even get one in a lifetime. It's a 1 in a million. You got 2 of them. So what are you looking for to keep things interesting as you've been going throughout the years?
Well, thank you. That's very sweet of you to say. I mean, first of all, I was just saying this earlier on, I really don't feel like I've begun yet with my career. You know, I've been lucky enough in my career to do some things, but I still don't feel like I've begun. If my career stopped now, for me personally, it would be a failure. I hadn't have got to anywhere near to what I've wanted to get to. But it also tickles me that like sometimes I'll meet people that have zero idea of some things that I've done, but they really like other things. Like the first thing that I ever started on was a very family-based regional detective show out of England with a very catchy title called Hetty Wainthropp Investigates, which ran for like 4 years and plays on PBS over here. Now there's people that I meet that will be like, when I was like 18, like, you were in Hetty Wainthropp Investigates, have you done anything else since then, I'm like, well, I've done a few things. Or sometimes I'd be like, nah, that was it. I'm all washed up now.
That's so exciting.
I don't do anything.
You get to blow their minds when they ask that question.
Yeah.
Have you done anything? Well,
yeah, and I like that. There was a girl that had recognized me from, I was lucky enough to do an Eminem video. She recognized me from this Eminem video. She was like, how did you do that? Did you know him? Were you friends with him? And I was like, well, no, I'm an actor, and I got the opportunity. And she was like, oh, you're an actor? Okay, so that's why you're in the Eminem video. I was like, man, you have no idea what I've done.
You were just the guy in the Eminem video.
I love that. I think that's brilliant, But in terms of like answering your question, what drives me on, what I always wanted to do, and what I continue to want to do now, is not repeat myself. So if I've played a good guy, then it will probably be a while before I play a good guy again, or I won't play him in the same way. And the actors that I admire in the business, my personal favorite, who I think is going to go down as the greatest cinematic actor of all time when he dies, is probably Robert De Niro. But the actors that I admire nowadays that are still working, your Gary Oldmans, your Daniel Day-Lewis's, Liam Neeson, Anthony Hopkins. What's interesting about those actors is you can't really pick out a classic film role that is going to be theirs. You can do that with, and I think he's a great actor, you can do that with Adam Sandler, you can do that with Eddie Murphy or Jim Carrey maybe to a certain extent. But with Oldman, like he goes over here, then he goes over here, then he does comedy, then he plays a violent guy, then he plays a lover, then he plays a cop, and then he plays the criminal. And I've always just thought it's a harder route to take, because the easier route in terms of financially and success is just to say, I'm really great at playing. I'm Adam Sandler, this is my toolbox, and now I'm going to consistently play roles that work in that toolbox. That's the reason why he's making $40 million a year, For someone like Gary Oldman, he doesn't make anywhere near that money because he's not willing to jump onto those franchise-type things. Johnny Depp doesn't do it. I mean, someone like DiCaprio has probably been... I'm sure DiCaprio gets offered everything in the business. Right. That's every major superhero. That's every major franchise character for the past 30 years. He doesn't want to do that because he wants to challenge himself, play different roles. And for me, I'm at a much lower level than that. But what turns me on about my career up to now is, people are like, oh, he's an actor? Well, yeah, but he's also a host of a nature show. Yeah, and he was in that video, and then he did that thing. And I like that people can't say, this is what he does, because they don't know what I'm going to do, because I don't know what I'm going to do.
To that end, where did the idea for the nature show come from? Because it's a fantastic show. It's coming to Animal Planet, I think, in June. They got the back catalog.
June,
yeah. Where did that come from, man? Because I know you've always been fascinated with that. But how'd you go?
It's just part of my life, really. My father was a biology teacher. My brother is a biology teacher. in the summertime, my dad would bring back what would be considered to be strange animals, lizards and snakes and certain reptiles and amphibians and insects and stuff. My brother's a big herpetologist. His kind of thing is about reptiles, and I love reptiles too, and I keep them at home. But my thing is entomology, which is the study of insects, which I've been into and I've studied them over the years, and I'm a big fan. I would come back from these trips and tell my agent about these trips. You know, I went to India to work with king cobras when I was like 20. I went to Thailand to swim with whale sharks when I was like 22. And I would tell him, you know, I went to Borneo and like was trying to track orangutans with a guide and wasn't successful and came back. And eventually my agent was like, you know, these are TV shows. Like the stories that you're telling me are TV shows. If you just brought a crew with you, you'd be able to go to different places. You'd be able to go for free. Why don't you consider that? And they were very sacred to me, so I kind of kept them. But then eventually I thought, well, that's true. I can't go to the Galapagos unless I get these filming permits, so maybe I'll ask. And then I met a producer, and I pitched the first episode of Wild Things, which is going to find my all-time favorite animal, which is the Ecuadorian army ant.
That's your all-time favorite. That's the number one, the Ecuadorian.
Yeah, ants are my biggest kind of animal-based heroes. You know, we can learn a lot from those societies, and they mirror our societies in a lot of ways. They live in very condensed quarters, but the way that they do things is different from the way that we do. I mean, Manhattan is in itself kind of a little ant's nest, you know. But if you look at an ant colony, no one goes hungry, no one gets murdered, no one gets raped, everyone gets fed, they look after their kids, they make cleaner soil, they make cleaner air, they make the environment better around them, healthier around them. We don't do that.
No, they've got it figured out.
We have a much larger brain. They themselves have a diminutive brain. But it's all about the group. It's about this. It's about the superorganism. And if we thought about ourselves as which when you get down to a molecular level, we are one creature. We are one species having this existence. We'd be much more considerate of how we feel about each other, certainly, but how we feel about trees, how we feel about the sky and the ocean and stuff. You know, we're having this conversation all day in the car, going backwards and forwards. That like, it's such a short-sighted view of us that we're like, well. You know, there's problems with people that don't have houses, so we're going to build houses in places where there's currently forests, because who needs forests? There's no point. Forests create clean air. We need air more than we need houses. Obviously, we need houses, but really, what we need to do is control our species. You know, if there was another animal breeding in the same way that we were, we would do something about it. We do things about it. When deer breed out of control, when elephants breed out of control, when any animal breeds out of control to the detriment of that species or us, we cull them. Now, I'm not saying you should cull humans, but in the 1980s, China had this one-child policy, and I think those guys are bang on it, because if we don't start controlling the population of our species, we're not going to survive, you know.
And so let me ask you this. Is that something, those feelings, the belief, that understanding of us being one big organism, is that something that once you started doing Wild Thing was kind of highlighted, or was that something you kind of felt all along? And now here's a show, we have a platform to kind of communicate this to the world. One, these things are freaking cool. Two, we're all connected and we need to start thinking of one another in a way like this.
Yeah, I think I felt it for a long time. The work of David Attenborough, the work of Jacques Cousteau, the work of Dr. Panofsky, The Ascent of Man, you know, obviously Darwin. These guys were all touching upon the fact that, you know, nothing exists in nature that isn't worthwhile. You know, there isn't an animal that is around that just happens to be around and is still around. They all perform a function, you know, and these things all fit together perfectly like a key in a lock. And if you scratch away one part of it, then things fall away, you know. Obviously, people are very sparked by sharks. You know, people say, oh, these sharks, I mean, they're swimming around in the ocean. We're trying to swim around the ocean and they eat us, and this is a real problem, you know. But sharks are a keystone species. Where you find sharks, you find very healthy marine environments. If you get rid of sharks, that marine environment will completely collapse. That's the fish that we eat. That's the seaweed that we eat. That's the other animals as well. I mean, you take us out of the equation. It's not just how does it affect me, it's how does it affect the planet. So I think the more I've been exposed to nature, the more I've seen that. And what's been beautiful for me, and probably the major reason why I've done it, is I've had people on Instagram, on Twitter, on social media say to me, I used to be scared of spiders, I used to kill spiders, and now I can put up with them. I'm not telling people, like, go out and buy a tarantula, go out and buy a black widow. That's not what I want. What I'm saying is, like, it's much more beneficial for us as a creature to live in balance with those creatures. Like, you're living over there, I'm living over here, you're not harming me, I'm not harming you. That's how we work together. That's how nature works, you know. So to hear that on social media, my kids were terrified of bees. Now they feel okay about it. My kids were terrified that when they jump in the swimming pool, there's going to be a shark in there. Now they know that's not the case. the small amount of education that comes with the entertainment is what I really, really goof off on.
For sure. Hang on. Did you say for a second there was a fear in the household when the swimming pool was open that there'd be a shark in it?
Yeah. I have a friend called Mark who is so terrified of sharks, he's my age, that he won't swim in a pool if there's no one else in it. I'm like, you can't think that there's a pool-based shark that's like invisible, first and foremost, if you've looked in the swimming pool. It just makes no sense. But he just has this innate fear that has put him in that place where he won't swim in a swimming pool if there's no one else swimming in there with him.
There's an old urban legend, urban myth that may or may not have been proven true by the internet that alligators within the New York sewer system will crawl up through your toilet if you're not careful.
Right. Yeah,
You hear a lot of people go, this is a thing. I'm not making this up. It's been said before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tell your friend about that. The invisible pool
it's
shark.
always like the urban myth thing is always like a friend of a friend, right? It's like a guy down in the pub. I'm always breaking all those myths. You know, this idea that like you'll eat a certain amount of spiders a year and spiders lay eggs in your mouth when you're sleeping and stuff.
I heard that's not true.
It's not true.
Thank heavens. All right.
It makes no sense. Spiders wouldn't lay eggs in a place that's moist, that's living, that's breathing. Spiders are aware that you're a living, breathing creature. So they're not going to go, oh, his mouth's open. I'm going to put my babies in there, and then when he wakes up, he's going to swallow my babies, and they're all going to die. It makes no sense for the spider. Also, the spider's going to run a risk of getting eaten, swallowed, bitten anyway. So it just does not happen. Has a spider fallen in someone's mouth when they've been sleeping? Yes. Has that created an urban myth? Yes. These things aren't true, you know.
Fair enough. To that end, though, are there any orifices that do appear inviting to a spider that I should be concerned about? While we're on this topic, I don't want to derail this. It's just very important to me that I know this, right?
Yeah, I don't know about spiders per se. I mean, there are creatures that live inside our bodies and outside our bodies that we're not aware of. There is a small mite which is related to a spider. It's a type of arachnid that lives in our eyebrows and our eyelashes. More of them live on females' eyelashes and eyebrows because they've evolved to eat mascara. These things are These things are not animals that you can get rid of. You can't rub them off. They live in a microscopic world on your eyebrows and your eyelashes. There's things that live in your nose. Obviously, there's a lot of gut flora that lives in your body. These things dictate mood. You know, everyone thinks like, oh, your brain dictates mood. So if I say I'm going to be happy, then I'm going to be happy. But a lot of what's happening with the animals, with the creatures, with the organisms that live in our gut dictate our mood, dictate our level of depression, our level of anxiety. These are things that we need to live in balance with. As soon as you start going, I can't believe I have animals inside my body, I'm going to get rid of them. That's when you're going to start causing major problems, you know.
All right, forgive my ignorance of all of the entire history of wild things, but do you ever go down to the microscopic level? Have you done that yet, or has it mostly been traveling the world?
It's much harder for people to
how do you get a crew in there?
Yeah. It's much harder for people to also feel connected to those things that are at a microscopic level. I mean, we did small stuff. We did, very small ants in certain places, but not down to a microscopic level. I fought for a long time with wild things because the creators of the show would say, can you do one about a gorilla? Can you do one about a polar bear or a lion or something that has a little bit more charisma that we can connect to? Because even though lions, polar bears, tigers can kill you, we're much more inclined to be into them than we are to be into a bat or a spider or a scorpion or a lizard. And I would always push back on that because I would say, look, I understand what you're saying, but those creatures already have a voice. They already have people championing them. It's the ones that are ignored, the ones that are vilified, the ones that people don't even want to reference. I don't want to talk about spiders. I don't even want to think about spiders. Those are the ones that I want to say, look, you don't have to love them. You don't have to hold them. You just have to be aware of the fact that they're important and that they matter because they exist. If they didn't matter, they wouldn't exist.
We're gonna turn it over to the audience in a second, but I just want to remind everybody before we get there that Wild Things is coming to Animal Planet. I want to say in June. Right,
June 7th?
June 7th? Yeah.
7 at 7?
7 at 7, Animal Planet. And this really awesome show, 100 Code, making its American debut Tuesday, May 29th. That's a week from today at 10/9 Central on WGN America. You got to check it out. It's absolutely awesome. Before we go there, I'm going to ask one. I'm contractually obligated to ask you something Lord of the Rings related.
Okay.
I wouldn't be doing my job. I know those movies, as epic as they were, as long as they were, things did not make it. Things couldn't make the cut. You have to trim the book down to make it all fit. Amazon's doing $1 billion show. Are you excited about this idea that maybe you'll get to see things as an outsider? Having been inside for so long, you'll see things you've missed. What do you think of the new show that they're talking about coming out?
It really depends on my level of interest is going to be dictated to by if Peter Jackson gets involved. They were talking about Peter Jackson getting involved. obviously he'd be a great person to get involved. Or whoever becomes the showrunner, if they have a huge amount of respect for that genre, then I'll be interested. You know, one of the things that I've heard is that it's obviously going to follow the early lives of certain members of the Fellowship before they form the Fellowship. So I like that. I've always liked the origin story in superhero stuff or any kind of movie. So if you see the early life of Aragorn, which is when he's Strider, he's more Strider than Aragorn, the early life of Gandalf before maybe he becomes as powerful as he is now, and the early life of the Hobbits, and then they come together to form the Fellowship. That's intriguing to me, you know. I want to try and stay away from it a little bit in terms of social media. People are always asking me, like, give a strong opinion. Is it shit or is it great? Like, I don't know. It's not even happened yet. Like,
it's not even a thing yet.
We have to wait and see, you know. And these are people, hopefully, with good faith that want to continue to live in that world and pay respect to what's been and gone. So you can't diss something, you know. You have to say, I really hope that it works out, and that's all you can do.
Exactly. No, I think it's way too early to have an opinion of it as a thing because it's just an idea. It's out there in the world.
Right.
I was, when I first heard about it, and the thing that I was curious about getting your side on is, like, as someone that has arguably a deeply more personal connection to it, having made the original films, read the books when you were a kid and all that, so it's very interesting to hear, oh, you are following it, you are excited to see what happens. That's cool, man. Yeah, it's cool to get your perspective, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, look, the director's cuts of those movies probably added an extra 40 minutes onto the films. And I always say to people, if you're going to watch The Fellowship, watch the director's cut. If you're going to watch any of the movies, watch the director's cut. Because that's what Pete wanted to put in. Guaranteed, Pete wanted to put in an extra hour, not an extra 40 minutes. But sooner or later, the people are like, you have to get rid of it. Yeah. There were things that were lost from the movie that I really liked. There's a scene with Merry and Pippin in the third movie where Pippin comes and finds Merry on the battlefield and he's lying in front of a massive dead Oliphant, which are those big kind of elephant-looking things, and he picks him up, and there's a really tender scene between Merry and Pippin where Merry doesn't recognize who he is, and Pippin's kind of shaking back into reality, but Merry doesn't know because he's kind of, you know, in the throes of war. Unfortunately, that didn't make it into the cut, and Pete kind of explained, like, it kind of pushes us away from our main story. So there's always going to be these things that are lost in some way, and maybe in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, for some anniversary, Pete will say, oh, I'll show you the other things that I wanted to make it in there. So I'm a fan too, you know. I mean, I love making those movies. I love those books, and I was so happy to be involved.
Last question, then we're going. Have you watched the movies at all in the time that's passed? Is that a hard thing for you to do?
It's not hard, but I have no reason to watch them, really.
You lived it.
Yeah, it feels a little egomaniacal to, like, watch it again. Last thing that I saw was probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe on the TV, like, flicking through it, and I was like, oh, okay. And I'd sit and watch it for 20 minutes, and then I'll see something that I don't like, oh, that was the day that I had a zit, or I wish they'd have chosen take 7 or whatever, and then I'll go through it. I just, like you said, exactly what you said. I lived it. I was there. Like, people say to me all the time, like, do you miss Lost? Do you miss, you know, being in X-Men or whatever? I'm like, no, I did it. I did it 100%. I did it with all of my being. I did it more than any other audience member asking me about. I was there. I know those people. I lived that thing. And now it's over. It's gone. You know, like, I don't need to go back to it. I did it.
Pretty amazing. Thank you for indulging me on the
Yeah,
question.
of course.
Let's go ahead. We've got some microphones in the room. We're going to take some questions from our audience.
Hi, Dominic.
Hey, how are you?
I'm a big fan of your work, and I'm an actress myself, so I have a question. What is the big secret for your success as an actor?
Well, thank you. I think a lot of that is based on luck. You know, you have to be, I was saying earlier on, you have to be in the right place at the right time. If I was 2 or 3 years older or younger, I wouldn't have been able to play a Hobbit. If I hadn't played a Hobbit, I wouldn't have met JJ, and from JJ I did Lost, and from there I did X-Men. It all kind of jumps. One of the things that I say to people when I'm talking to, like, actors or people wanting to act, one of them's it seems a little heartless, but it's true, which is that I say, if this is what you really want to do, then just don't give up. Because if you don't give up, it'll happen eventually. And most people give up. Like, I would say 3/4 of the people give themselves a time frame. I'm going to do this in 6 months, 9 months, a year. And if they don't get to that place, then they just give up, you know? So if you just stay the course, then it'll happen or you'll die trying, which seems a little heartless, but it's true, you know? And the other thing that I say to actors, which again seems a little cynical at the end of this conversation, I'll say, put your hand up if you want to be a famous actor. So maybe half the room will put their hand up. And then I'll say, only keep your hand up if you just want to be an actor. You're not really interested about how famous you're going to be. And some people put their hand down because it is like catching lightning in a bottle. If you're an actor and you pay the wages and you pay your mortgage by being an actor, that's amazing. You've hit the jackpot. If you're an actor and you're doing something that people have seen, then you're doing even better. If you're an actor that you're doing something that people have seen, that people like, with filmmakers that you like, it's amazing. So I think if all you want to do is just act and work in that profession, then you shouldn't kind of have these crazy standards of everything that I do has to be a hit, everything that I do has to be a smash. Because if you look at the climate nowadays, the only things that we really know are going to be absolute stone cold smashes, probably a Marvel movie and probably a Star Wars movie. You know, if De Niro's the greatest actor of all time, which I truly believe he's the greatest cinema actor of all time, every time he comes out in a movie, it should be the biggest film in the world. It's not. Leonardo DiCaprio's movies make significantly less money than a Marvel movie with someone who you'd never heard of before. So the business is really changing. If you love acting and that's what you want to do and you manage to do that for a living, that's a great thing to achieve. Thanks.
That's a great question. Thank you for that. We got time for 2 more. The next one's coming from right here in the front.
What's up, man?
Hi,
I like
Dominic.
that jacket.
Yep, my name is John. I'm a huge Lost fan. I had to write the little message
Oh, nice.
on my hand. I like hearing new things about Lost. So is there any memory or story from filming that you can share?
I mean, there was a really close kind of camaraderie with that crew and that team. You know, shooting the pilot, we were all very close, and I think we realized quite quickly that we were making something quite significant. I mean, they brought over a jumbo jet and then dismantled it on the North Shore of Oahu, and we had police as handlers making sure that the traffic was cleared and making sure that people weren't, you know, getting in the back of shot and stuff like that. But the police were consistently getting phone calls from tourists saying, a plane just crashed on the North Shore of Oahu, can you get here? Because there'd be fires and wings on fire and stuff like that, you know. So that was kind of interesting. I remember when I did that scene, the Not Penny's Boat thing, I was in this container. I really like water. I like surf and I swim, and you know, when I was a kid, I used to do it a lot. And people were quite nervous about me being in that water, but I said, oh, I'm fine. I've never really been hurt by water. I kind of trust it. It'd be cool. So what they had was, I was in this kind of, almost like a TARDIS kind of thing, container, telephone box, and then a massive crane above me. And the crane had water in its little bucket, and it would just pour the water in the bucket. So it was almost immediately, you went from completely dry to just full up to the top. And all the producers and the director was like nervous, like, you know, it's going to be pretty hectic. It's going to happen really fast. And I was like, it'll be fun. And it was really fun. And I did it. And I remember finishing the scene, and it was kind of like one of the last things that I did before I left. And a couple of like the crew members were kind of, you know, a bit emotional type thing, like coming over, giving me a hug. And I just thought, oh, okay, they're just saying bye. But then later on, when I went back for significant seasons, they were like, no, like that moment was a big moment in the show. And for me, I was just kind of getting through my day's work, you know, but I think they were able to see like, oh, that's a benchmark moment in the show, you know, but it's just another day for me. It has to be. I can't put too much weight in it in that way, you know.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for your question, man. I'm getting the signal. We got time for one more question, and it's going to come from, right here.
Hi.
What's up, man?
This is going to be an online question.
Okay.
Eve would like to know, were you able to improvise or do anything unexpected that ended up in the series?
On Lost?
On this.
100 code. Well,
100 code.
Let's start here.
I mean, there was a lot of banter going backwards and forwards with Mika and I, which was improvised, because I would find stuff in the way that I would speak where I would be doing it in an East Coast accent, and Mika just wouldn't understand what I was saying, you know. So he'd be like, "What?" And then I would do, "Well, you don't understand what I'm fucking saying. You open your fucking ears." And they'd like use that in the show sometimes, you know. So that was cool. And then, I mean, I always try and do stuff that's improvised. Sometimes it works, gets left in. Sometimes it doesn't. Like there's a scene in Lost where the scene was written as Charlie sits next to Claire's diary. Charlie struggles with not reading Claire's diary, and I'm pretty sure that was it in the script notes. That's all I had. And then Jack Bender, who was the director of the show, he was just like, because we talked about Peter Sellers a lot. I'm a huge fan of Peter Sellers, and he was like, just do a little Peter Sellers-y type thing, like give us a little homage to Peter Sellers. So we had this thing of like, you know, he's like goes to do it and then kind of beats himself up and then goes to do it again and then walks off and then comes back. And it was very Pink Panther-y stuff to me. And that very coolly got left in. So you just never know. As an actor, you're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it sticks. Lots of times when I think I do something really good, it doesn't make it. And sometimes when I do something that I think is kind of crappy or I make a mistake and I recover from it, they put that in because it's real, you know. As
an actor, does it take you out of it, or does it put you further into the moment when you're improvising? Because when you improvised, is your immediate thought, I just did something really good, I hope that makes it in, or it like pulls you out of the scene, or do you only think that upon reflection? Like, how does that work? How do you stay present with the actor that you're working with and still just come up with things in that moment without it taking you out?
Yeah, I mean, improvising is the ultimate moment. That's what you're looking for. You're trying to be in the moment so much that you're not even aware that you're in the moment. Yeah. If you watch animals or little kids, they're in the moment a lot, which is why they feel things completely and then they let them go. You know, a little kid, if he drops his ice cream, it's just like, ah! It's like the end of the world. And then you go, I'll go buy you a new one. They go, oh, great. Because they're in that, they've moved from that moment to that moment. You know, like adults go, I dropped my ice cream today. It was really annoying. And you're like, what does that matter? You just get another ice cream. But kids feel it in that way. And I think with improvising, you have to completely feel so. You have to know your character as well as you can, so that if someone were to say to me, you know, what's your favorite topping on a pizza? I would know that Conley's favorite topping on a pizza is pepperoni and mushroom, because that's just his thing. That's his jam. You couldn't come out of it and be like, oh, he likes, you know, goat's cheese and pineapple. Like, no, he doesn't. He's from New York. So you need to know your character well, and then it's playing. You need to be in a sense of play. Sometimes actors don't want to play. Sometimes you work with an actor that's quite rigid. They're not really that interested in playing. Maybe they're uncomfortable with improvising. So once you start playing with them, they're like, it's not really my wheelhouse. I'm not into it. But for me, I like playing. I like messing about. I like being funny and silly. And I like when lots of times when you work with a really cool director, they'll say, okay, we'll do 2 or 3, and then we'll do 1 for you. So you do 2 takes, and then they'll be like, okay, we got it. You know, you said your lines, you hit your marks, you did everything. Let's just roll again, and we'll do 1 for you. And that's when you do stuff that's fun, yeah.
I got to wrap things up. We're running out of time here, but Dom, thanks so much. 1, for coming in and hanging out with us. 2, for making this badass show. It really is a fantastic watch, especially if you're into those kinds of crimes and investigation sort of things. And just it's fun to see it in another place entirely with another culture backdrop and just all this fun stuff. You guys did a hell of a job. You should be proud of this show.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it, and thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. A week from tonight on WGN America, 100 Code is out. Make some noise for Dominic Monaghan, everybody. Come on. Come on.